If you've been priced out of a starter home, this week handed you something rare, a piece of good news. And then, almost in the same breath, a reason to wonder whether it'll ever actually count. Congress just passed the biggest housing bill in 30 years. Both parties, barely any opposition, the kind of vote you almost never see in Washington anymore. Then it stalled. So here's the question worth sitting with for the next few minutes. A bill that could change who you're bidding against for a home just passed. So why isn't it helping you yet? And when it finally does, what does it actually change for your budget? Let's decode this together. Let's start with what happened, because the headline sounds bigger than your day-to-day might feel. For years, when you toured a house and lost it to an all-cash offer that closed in a week, there was a real chance you weren't losing to another family. You were losing to a company. A big one. The kind that buys homes by the hundreds, skips the inspection, waives cash, and turns the whole thing into a rental. Losing your dream home to a family who loved it more is one thing. Losing it to a spreadsheet is a different kind of sting. And a lot of you have felt it. This new bill goes straight at that. Once a single company owns 350 single-family homes, the rule says it can't keep buying more of them. That's the line that got Wall Street's attention, and it's the part that might change who shows up at your next open house. And the cap is just the headline. The bill is really a giant bundle of smaller fixes, all pointed at the same problem. Not enough homes and prices that keep climbing. It clears away some of the red tape that slows down small building projects. It frees up local banks to put more money into housing. And it changes one quietly expensive rule on manufactured homes, the kind built in a factory, so they no longer need a heavy steel frame underneath. Drop that requirement, builders say, and you could shave $5,000 to $10,000 off the price of one of the most affordable homes on the market. That's a used car. That's a year of somebody's daycare. Now here's where it gets frustrating, and we're going to be honest about why. A bill passing Congress isn't the finish line. It only becomes law when the president signs it, and right now, that signature is the holdup. The president has tied his approval to a separate, unrelated voter identification bill. So the housing package is sitting in limbo, passed, celebrated, and still not law. The House Speaker has said he expects it to be signed soon, but as of right now, it's waiting. That's the real villain here. Not a person, not a party. It's the gap between a vote and a signature. Plus the fact that something families have been asking about for years got tangled up with a fight about something else entirely. What that means for you is simple and a little maddening. The part of this that could help you compete for a home is finished and ready. It's just waiting on a step that has nothing to do with housing at all. And while we're being honest, let's name the other obstacle. The words. Institutional investor. Build to rent, re-amortize. We promise these are all less intimidating than they sound, and yes, somebody, somewhere, got paid to make them sound exactly that scary. So let's say it does get signed. Here's where it touches your life, and also where we need to manage expectations, because this isn't the housing miracle the headline might promise. First, the good part. In neighborhoods where big investors had been scooping up starter homes, slowing them down means fewer of those all-cash bids you simply can't beat. Less competition at the bottom of the market is exactly where a regular buyer finally feels some breathing room. The bigger effect might be in your head, and in the room at a bidding war. When the cash giants pull back even a little, you stop feeling like you're showing up to a fight you already lost. Now the reality check. Across the country, these big investors own only about 3% of single-family rentals. 3! So this won't suddenly flood your town with cheap houses. In a few hot metros where they were really concentrated, you might feel it. Most everywhere else, the change will be quiet. There's also a side door built into the rule. Companies can still build brand new homes specifically to rent out. That's build to rent. Houses constructed from the start to be rentals instead of sold. Supporters say it keeps new housing coming. Critics worry it just shuffles the same money somewhere else. Both of those can be true at the same time. Even the people who fought hardest for this rule will tell you it's a first step, not a finish line. And if you're a small local landlord with a couple of rental houses, none of this is aimed at you. The rule was built for the giants, not for the family down the street with a duplex. Here's the part that matters, whether or not Washington ever gets its act together. You can't control the signature. You can't control which investor shows up at a closing, but there's a lever inside your own loan that almost nobody talks about. Mortgage rates right now are sitting in the mid-6% range. They're not dropping to rescue your budget anytime soon, no matter what the hopeful headlines say. So the old plan of buy now and refinance later isn't a strategy, it's a bet. So how do you buy in a market like this without getting hurt? You underwrite yourself the way a careful lender would. Assume today's rate is the rate, not some future one you're praying for. Keep a little more cash in reserve than feels comfortable. And make sure the deal works at the payment you'd actually have on day one, not the one you're hoping to refinance into later. That's where a recast comes in, and this is the one piece of jargon worth learning today. A recast is when you make a big, one-time payment toward your principal, the actual balance you owe, and then ask your lender to recalculate your monthly payment around that smaller balance. Your interest rate doesn't change. The loan still ends on the same date. What drops is the monthly payment. Sit with that for a second. It's a smaller bill every month without giving up the rate you already locked in. Refinancing usually means a fresh loan, new closing costs, and a brand new rate, which, in a mid-6% market, could be worse than what you've got. A recast skips all of that. Cheaper, simpler, and you keep what you've already got. It's especially useful if you sell one home and roll the cash into the next one. Instead of letting that money sit, you can shrink the payment on the new place and breathe a little easier every month. So what do we actually keep an eye on from here? First, the easy one, and you can check it in about 30 seconds. Search whether the bill has been signed into law yet. If it has, the clock starts. If it hasn't, the standoff is still live. Second, watch your own market, not the national story. The places where big investors were most active are where any shift shows up first. And even after a signature, rules like this don't flip a switch, they phase in. So if you're house hunting this summer, plan around the market you're actually standing in, not the one the bill promises for later. Third, keep an eye on that build-to-rent side door. If big money simply pivots into building rentals instead of buying up existing homes, the effect on prices could end up smaller than supporters are hoping. This story is still developing, and we'll be watching it closely as the next steps play out. Here's the one thing worth doing this week, and it has nothing to do with waiting on Washington. If you've got a mortgage, call your servicer and ask a single question. Does my loan qualify for a recast, and what's the minimum lump sum and fee to do it? Conventional loans often qualify. Many government-backed and jumbo loans don't. You don't need a lump sum today to ask the question. Knowing the rule before you sell a house or come into money means you can move fast when it counts, instead of scrambling later. Because the real takeaway is simple. The bill matters, but it isn't going to rescue your budget. The moves you control are the ones that will. Quick reminder, everything we cover on Decoded Money is for educational purposes only. None of this is financial advice, and we're not licensed financial advisors. Before you make any money moves, do your own research and talk to someone who knows your specific situation. If this was useful, hit subscribe. We do this every week. That's the Decode for this week. We'll see you in the next one.